Hey, my lovely friends, as the US election is drawing closer, today we're going to learn some vocabulary on this topic with Dr. Sam Harris and Ben Shapiro. The words will be in the description if you want to read more example sentences. Let's do this.
Especially to the question of Ben's point being that, if he was such a strong man, if he had such Hitlerian fascist tendencies, and Kamala Harris has called him a fascist, why didn't he do fascism in his first term?
Well, as Ben said himself, he was checked by people around him, right? And the concern now is that he would have not General Milley and McRaven and McMaster and John Kelly and serious people like that. He'd have My Pillow guy and Mike Flynn and a rogues gallery of enablers. And
Let's talk about the first phrase of the lesson, which is a rogues gallery. This refers to a number of individuals, some people who are known for being dishonest and manipulative. A rogues gallery, and sometimes in the context of law enforcement, this refers to the information which is kept by the police about criminals. It's spelled with a GNAU. It'll be in the description for you to look at. A rogues gallery, a rogues gallery.
sycophants and
He would also be surrounded by sycophants. A sycophant is a person who praises someone else in order to gain some sort of advantage. They please others, usually those who have a position of authority, in order to take some sort of advantage. Sycophant. And in the plural, sycophants. Let's go back and hear these expressions again.
and serious people like that. He'd have My Pillow guy and Mike Flynn and a rogues gallery of enablers and sycophants and loyalists, right? I mean, that really is the concern, and that's why I think Ben can't draw the lessons he's drawing from the first term and broadcast them onto the second, right? I mean, we know what Trump says he wants to do, and he wants to do crazy things, like in turn something like 12 million illegal aliens in something like concentration camps and deport them, right? And if you picture what this would do to our society, it's just a moral abomination.
An abomination is something in action or an event that is very unethical. It is horribly unethical. We pronounce this word abomination. Another good word to learn here is reprehensible. This one is an adjective. So if you said this was morally reprehensible, you would mean pretty much the same thing. So let's go over and hear that word.
Aliens in something like concentration camps and deport them, right? And if you picture what this would do to our society, it's just a moral abomination, right? I mean, just to take this narrow case, I mean, maybe we want to talk about immigration and the southern border, and about which I think Ben and I are going to largely agree. But I'm pretty sure I don't want to live in a country where millions of children who are American citizens, right, who have one or more parent who isn't a citizen, watch their parents get deported, right? If you just imagine what that would look like. Now you might think, well, Trump's never going to do that, right? You're going to grade him on a curve, and
The next phrase is to grade someone on a curve. And this is something that teachers, in fact, do a lot. Sometimes we give students a very challenging examination, and we give the top score to someone who has not necessarily crushed this exam, but has done much better than other people. So this is to put the students on a curve, or to put the scores on a curve. Here, Sam means we're gonna take the longer view, that we're gonna take what Trump says in context. We're not gonna take what he says all that seriously. So when he says something inflammatory, we're not gonna think he's probably going to carry out what he says here.
going to take him seriously, but not literally, etc. But you could do the same thing with Kamala Harris. When Kamala Harris says she wants to do a wealth tax, we all know that she's not going to be able to do that. She's certainly not going to be able to do that if she doesn't have a House and a Senate and a Supreme Court, and she seems to be likely to have none of those things at this point if she wins. But no, so take her seriously, but not literally, right? I mean, there's a double standard here in the way partisans think about, partisans for Trump think about what he says and bracket everything he says as just political theater.
So he is implying that these candidates are not being treated equally or in the same manner. If we believe that Trump is not going to implement what he says he will, well, we should do the same to Kamala as well.
But I want to come back to something you said to Ben. Just, I mean, all of his words at this point on this topic could be used against him, right? And this change of heart, I think, is worth examining, because I think we lose sight of just how not normal Trump is as a candidate. I mean, I think, Ben, if I had told you 10 years ago that you would one day support a presidential candidate who bragged about owning a teen beauty pageant so that he could barge into the dressing room and ogle naked underage girls, right?
To barge into a place is to forcefully enter that particular space, to barge into. And the next word is ogle. You can pronounce it ogle as well. I believe the more accurate pronunciation is ogle. And this is to look at someone in a sexually inappropriate way. So he says that just imagine that if I told you that this person, right, who would brag, who would boastfully talk about these things, would become the president, you'd be shocked.
I don't think you would believe me, right? If I had told you that you would support a candidate who, as president, had been denounced by almost every four-star general who worked under him as.
To denounce someone is to say a lot of very strong negative things about that person, to criticize someone heavily, to condemn that person or their actions. Let's pronounce it together, denounce. So Sam says that Trump has been denounced by four-star generals who have worked under him. Denounce. And the noun is denouncement. Denouncement. When you use the verb denounce in the past form, the pronunciation changes a little bit. So we pronounce it denounced with a t sound at the very end.
As a dangerous moron, right? I don't think you would believe me. Or a president who had inspired an assault on our Capitol, directly inspired it. I mean, as much as you want to parse what he might have said in that initial speech, there's no question he called everyone to D.C. and inspired what amounted to be a riot on the Capitol. And he inspired this. I mean, we had people wearing Camp Auschwitz T-shirts and flying a Confederate flag, smearing shit on the walls that Abraham Lincoln built, right? That's what happened on January 6th.
A good word to learn here that I could introduce is desecrate. And this is to show extreme disrespect to something that deserves our respect and should be honored. This is pronounced desecrate. So Sam says that those individuals desecrated this place, desecrated.
And if I told you that you would support this guy and still support him, a guy who has honored these people, right, who stood by as they were calling for the hanging of his vice president, he just stood by tweeting narcissistic bullshit. And he would later record a song with some of the worst offenders, right? There's 20 of them in prison singing on jailhouse telephones. He recorded his own track on this song, and he plays it at his rallies, right? If I told you would support such a person, you, Ben, right, you with your commitment to morality, right, and religious principles and public probity. And
probity is a great word. It refers to having a high standard of ethics and morality. So if you possess probity, you care about your actions and you want to make sure that what you do is ethical and is in line with morality.
Ethics. I don't think you would believe me, but that's where we are, right? That's how fully Trump has distorted our politics.
So a couple things. So that there are a couple of arguments. There's one you made early, and then you sort of morphed it into the second argument about character, which
when something morphs into another thing, it changes. It changes and becomes something very different. So he says that you started with an argument, which then morphed into an argument about Trump's character. It changed into something. It transitioned and became something very different.
I'll get to in a moment. So there was the first argument, which was, you're taking Trump seriously, but not literally. Why can't we do the same with Kamala? So let's do that. Let's take her seriously, but not literally when it comes to many of her policy prescriptions. Well, seriously, but not literally, for Trump on immigration, looks like he's not going to deport 12 million people by caging up entire families in concentration camps. It looks like term number one, in which he puts back in place, for example, remain in Mexico, in which he has a proper interpretation of what asylum law looks like, in which we properly allocate resources for Border Patrol. I've been down to the border. They're completely misallocated under the Biden administration as Border Patrol itself.
A couple good words there. One is allocate, and its antonym, which is misallocate. So he says that those resources were misallocated under Biden's administration. They were given to the wrong places or people. They were misallocated. We have allocate, which is to properly, for the most part, give something to someone or give someone a task, and its opposite, which is misallocate.
We'll tell you. And then you look at the status quo that Kamala Harris has presented, which was effectively for 3.5 years an open border. And so that would be taking them seriously, but not literally. We look at the records, not just what they say, which was sort of my original model, is look at what they do, not just what they say. Then there's the sort of characterological argument that you're making about Donald Trump. And again, I think that the same could be true in reverse. If I had told you, Sam Harris, a few years ago, that you'd be supporting a candidate who says that men can be women, for example, or a candidate who has openly campaigned with, say, Mark Ruffalo, who has compared Israel to the Nazi state, or that you would be supporting a candidate whose first action in office, apparently, according to the New York Times about 3 days ago, was to examine intelligence reports for gendered language with regard to America's foreign adversaries who are female.
Adversary is a strong enemy. So if you say that, oh, that guy is Trump's adversary, it is Trump's enemy. Adversary is a very good word to learn. It's a noun, and you could also learn the adjective, which is adversarial. So for instance, their adversarial attitude. Let's go back and hear that word again.
According to the New York Times about 3 days ago, was to examine intelligence reports for gendered language with regard to America's foreign adversaries who are female. You'd be surprised too. I guess all this is to say that we've entered a magically different world, for better or for worse. I think in many ways for worse, and I think you'd probably agree on that. But that world exists. And so now you're faced with a binary choice between candidates, and that binary choice cannot be avoided. I mean,
All right, so that binary choice cannot be avoided, according to Ben Shapiro. Anyways, tomorrow is an important day. I hope you've learned at least one word with my video lesson. Catch you in the next one.